Like, how many nuggets of wisdom are in the Bible that people just don't have any idea about, And it's like, oh, so what I want to do is have conversations with people, not necessarily as a Bible thumper per se, even though I am, but I want to, because I want to talk to secular people who are curious or looking for answers, and I want to circumvent them instead of coming straight onto them and going, "Oh, you need Jesus in your life." Well, you do, but I want to come at them sideways and go, "Hey, here's this thing, like your situation. I think this thing would make sense. This nugget of wisdom applies to you." And you're like, "Oh, cool. Where'd you get that from?" I was like, "Well, it's actually from Isaiah, or that's from, Corinthians, Second Corinthians, or that's from like Leviticus, or wherever it is, And they're like, "Oh, that's the Bible." It's like, dude, there's so much in there. Have you ever read it? Like,
Well,
have you?
I'll tell you what, bro. Let me just say this. Okay. Two things. Jesus Christ's answer to the Pharisees, and then number two, Abraham Lincoln. Okay. Number one, they said to Jesus, "What's the first two important commandments? If you had to choose two." And Jesus said, one, love the Lord your God with all your strength, your soul, your mind, your heart, all that, right? And then secondly, it said, love your neighbor as
Yeah,
yourself.
love each
And
other.
all the rest of the law is summed up in these two things.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, number two, Abraham Lincoln said that if you wish to have an audience and someone consider your opinion, the first thing you must do is love them as a neighbor. And so when I think about, outreach, and this goes back to actually a conversation that I think we've already had, back to, you were talking about you and I in the street and how we kind of like go by that. I think the first thing you have to do is love people. And as you love the people, it's almost like God will naturally steer the conversation over to where you can witness. And it's because the Holy Spirit in you makes you love people so much, man, that, it's natural that, because, what it is I find that I don't have to even have an opener when it comes to talking about Jesus. I start talking about everything else, and before I know it, I say something that people read between the lines and they go, "Oh, this guy must believe in God. Oh, well, why don't you do that?" "Oh, because, I got saved when I was 40, and I don't watch those type of movies anymore. I try not to do that." And then I'm not preaching at them. They go, "Oh, well, tell me more about that." And then they'll go, "Oh, you know what?" Because this is what happened the other day when I was in the Uber. The guy's like, "Oh, you know what? My wife has been really trying to get in the Bible recently." And because of that, he was open to hearing it. And he's like, "Hey, man, because he wanted to, occasionally I still smoke a cigarette or something. And he's like, "Can we stop and smoke a cigarette?" I'm like, "Yeah." And then at the end of this ride, the guy's like, "Look, I can get you a job where I work. It's 27 an hour." And I'm like, "Whoa, that's a lot. That's a blessing." So I don't know if God's opening the door for me to do that job. But what I'm saying is, man, I think that in the same way I'm saying that when you meet people, concentrate on loving them first and the Jesus part later, I think a ministry should be first an outreach of love. Like, "Hey, we love you. This you come to this podcast or whatever, know that we're coming in a spirit of love and understanding. We just want to help you live a better life," or whatever, or listen to people. You might even have a part of the thing where people can call in, just listen to people. You know what I mean? So I think that's key when we look at the way we're going to do this art, because we're both going to do it a different way. We're called to similar fields, but everybody has their own like inclinations. But that's my first thing, man. I just want to have the opportunity to love people and talk to them about God and just be cool with them. Because, I mean, how many times has somebody taken the approach of like a preacher or whatever, and people are like, I think people kind of see you through that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. That's why I want to just do it with conversations, because if I want to be preached at, I'll go to church, right? And so
Right,
I don't
right.
necessarily want to be preached at while I'm out and about in my daily life. And just like you
Yeah.
said, when you're just, the thing is, and like you said that this guy could tell it on you, and people can tell, right? People can tell.
Dude, can I say this? I think I told you this already. I just gotta say this right quick. There's this girl, and I used to go to her church, and one day she says to me, "I miss you." And I'm like, "Well, if you
Oh
miss
yeah,
me, how come you don't come and visit me?"
right.
And basically I'm like, "Oh, so you just missed me inside of your church." Don't fucking,
You just-
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want the bullshit. I don't want the bullshit gospel. It's like, you love me or you don't, bro. And
Yeah.
if you love me, hang out with me. And then you want to talk about Jesus after you've already broken bread. You know, because think about it. What did Jesus do? He went and hung out with people, drank, and he had the parties with Matthew. Remember, he's like, Matthew, I'm going to hang out at your house tonight.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what I think Jesus was trying to say for that. It's like, look, man, love them first. And then the light coming out of you, which is me, which is Jesus, that light of Jesus has no, if people hang out with Jesus, they got no choice but to get saved. You know what I mean?